Welcome to our session on Swift Swagger Editor. The purpose of the session is to introduce a new product offering that we are planning to publish on Swift Developer Portal by mid of August 2024. So the purpose of the session to understand what it's all about and how it can help you in adoption of new services proposed by Swift, provided by Swift via API channel on MVCPN or Swift network. So very quickly, what Swift Swagger Editor is about, right? Swift Swagger Editor is originating from Swagger Editor, which is open source software available under Apache license version 2.0, coming from SmartBeer. And the purpose of this editor, as you see, design, describe, and document UAPI. As of today, the Swagger editor support Open API specification 3x and Async API 2x, right? What you see. Obviously, there are some differences between Open API specification and Async API specification, which we are not going to cover. But to a certain extent, you should see Async API specification as superset on top of Open API specification. So in our case, as I mentioned in the beginning, we see Swift Swagger Editor as something explaining you in which sense API channel over MVCPN is different from traditional API channel existing for internet APIs and specifically for Swift Internet APIs as well, right? So the single purpose of Swift Swagger Editor is to explain such standards as RFC 7523, RFC 7515, what we call end-to-end non-repudiation, in a context of using signing footprint where the signing footprint is a channel certificate, right? So why specifically we talk about channel certificate? Because channel certificate, it's a signing footprint for Alliance Cloud customers connected to Swift via either physical VPN box or Alliance Connect Virtual. I would like to remember, I would like to remind that you can also consume GPI APIs of Swift available on Swift network using channel certificate as a security footprint. It's alternative security footprint, alternative to default one, which is still mostly used based on SACS and HSM. So, well, I mean, Swagger Editor is something known by developers since, if I may say, ages, right? As soon Swagger API specification standard, which was renamed to Open API specification, was introduced, Swagger Editor was more or less always there, right? It is API design tool, right? An API testing tool, which we are going to see in a moment. So the problem statement, right? So if you are a customer of Swift APIs available over internet channel, which we will see in a moment, you could rely on Swagger Editor, for instance, to test Swift internet APIs, right? And we are going to demonstrate this today. However, when it comes about Swift APIs available over Swift channel, or what we say MVCPN network, you would quickly find out that it's simply not possible to use the existing Swagger Editor software, right? So, the business objective of the entire initiative is to explain to business audience and API product vendors what it means to consume MVCPN APIs from within your infrastructure, right? So with your infrastructure geared primarily to front ends, right? For instance, if you API product vendor, or if you're a customer and you would like to integrate MVCPN APIs in your front and what it means actually, right? So we see in terms of evolution of Swift Zero Footprint offering, which is a separate conversation, we see Swift Swagger Editor an important contributor for the pillar of interactive documentation. Because quickly to remind you, we have interactive documentation in the form of Postman collection, explaining what Swift Zero Footprint is. And recently we added interactive documentation in form of Apache Meter project. And Swift Swagger Editor is important addition to the overall Swift Zero Footprint offering, right? With this being said, allow me just to switch to demo mode. So for the demo mode, I'm planning to use obviously developer portal, Swift developer portal, and recommendation would be always to go with Swift.com. I'm planning to use my Swift.com account. So once I'm in, I would be showing you two APIs, how you can play with two APIs using initially Swagger Editor and then Swift Swagger Editor. As an example, I will take reference data API, SwiftRef API. So important element on SwiftRef API is OpenAPI specification. I'm going to download OpenAPI specification to desktop. Okay, save. And then for my test with Swift Swagger Editor, I'm planning to take Swift messaging API specification, which is in the section of connectivity. Swift messaging API allows you to do messaging via Alliance Cloud. If you are MVCPN customer, important, right? So I'm going to take this version. And I'm going to say messaging API specification, right? So that's exactly what you see on the desktop, right? So my first test would be to introduce the concept of Swift Swagger Editor, how you can use it, right? So Swagger Editor is a type of software available as a SaaS offering, right? So I'm going to use the software which is available in the cloud. So let me check what's going on here. Yeah, so by default, software presents kind of classical Swagger pet stop open API example, but in our case, I'm going to import a file, and I'm going to take Swift reference API. I'm going to upload it. So the first thing that we need to be careful. Always check URLs, right? So we have API3.com. It's our API platform, or our API platform SaaS, which is not Swift Network, which is internet, right? So I will be using live environment. And the first thing that I need to do, I need to authorize, right? Oh, that's very interesting. I need to authorize myself with this regard. And unfortunately, and I need to, well, you know, we have some glitches as well, right? So that's something that I need to check with my colleagues, right? The security model for this API, as you see, defined as security model for MVCPN API, right? And I'm going to fix that in a moment, right? In front of you, right? And obviously I will be doing this fix on a local version of this specification, which I'm not going even to save at the end. But at the end of the day, it's quite an interesting example, because as soon as you start working with OpenAPI specification, you need to start paying attention to certain elements, right? And maybe, I don't know, maybe I will be able to correct the situation quickly if I go, for instance, to APIs if I go to, let's say, if I go to ref data, if I look at the reference OpenAPI specification, if I looked at the previous OpenAPI specification, so you see, I see that type of thing that I actually need, right? OS password grant type. And how I can grab it quickly, quite interesting. So I'm downloading this specification from the same desktop, right? So what I'm going to do, I obviously can open this specification in any editor. I will be using Xcode editor. And it's kind of interesting exercise, right? It's demonstrating, because as soon as you start using OpenAPI specification, like it or not, you need to understand the structure of these applications, right? So, sorry, the structure of semantic of API contract. Sorry for delay. There is some problem with Xcode. Cannot just open it up. Okay, finally I managed to open it, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm trying to locate a security block, which I'm doing right now in front of you. So I'm just scrolling to a security block. So, and I'm taking the entire block of correct specification like that. I'm taking it like that, right? And I'm going to copy paste this block to that place, right? So, and at the end of the day, point of attention, the system is telling me security scheme was defined but was never used, right? So, and then what is important is to make sure that it's used, right? And if I looked at security, then I could say, well, it's only USB or token, but I would like specifically for this API, because we talk about Internet API, I would like to use this type of security. So I like to edit. Okay. So now I don't have a warning. The contract was updated. So if I press authorize button, then I would say I see a different type of security model. So you see an array. So I still decided to keep it for MVCPN, and then I added to S password grant type, right? And that's kind of important. You may say, well, I did some fixing of API specification in front of you. Yes, because as soon as you start working with open API specifications, it's unavoidable. You need to know the structure. And what I just done, it will be reported and it will be fixed, right? So now what I'm going to do, first of all, I need to have consumer key, consumer secret, or client ID, client secret, which for Swift Ref API, you need to obtain from Swift Developer Portal, right? So, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to use values which I already stored in a different place, which I will be taking from a Postman collection, right? And from a Postman collection, I will be taking these values. More specifically, I will be taking the value of consumer key, copy, taking the value of consumer key. Oops, sorry. I don't have an ability to do copy paste for some reasons. Interesting. So, but anyway, I can take this variable from, oh, So it's indeed your value, but it's okay. It's another obstacle which we will be able to overcome. I go to developer portal, I opening my applications, right? And for my application, I could say for sandbox, which I see, I have requested the key for sandbox, but I'm not planning to use a sandbox. So it's another obstacle. I'm really sorry for that. But we need to overcome this obstacle, right? Because I know that in a new project, I just copy paste Postman collection from a different place. I'm going to say delete here. And then I'm going to import Postman collection containing correct consumer key, consumer secret. Right. So now if I look at the authorization and if I take a consumer key, so if I do copy, then I need to put the value here in client ID, right? Then I need to take consumer secret. So I'm taking the value of consumer secret. I'm putting the value here. Now, very important for username password, I need to take license ID and license secret, right? Why it's important? Because that's a value that you need to provide or you need to get from your Swift administrator, right? How? From as a Swift.com customer, you have Swift administrator, and the role of Swift administrator is to get license ID and license secret for SwiftRef API as soon as you order this offering, right? So these are my values, right? And that's fundamentally important, right? It's fundamentally important. And then what is important is always to check token URL, which you see API-Swift.com or SV1 token, right? Initially, it could be kind of overwhelming, all the amount of details which I'm providing here. But at the end of the day, it is, you see, that's URL. At the end of the day, these details are very important. Now I'm going to take a session, right? So apparently I got a session, right? So another point which is very important, right now I'm going to use Swagger editor to make SwiftRef API call. And obviously in terms of security of the browsers, I will be from a page which is displayed in this browser. I will be accessing another resource because normally browsers prevents a page which is downloaded in a browser to access any resource which basically different to the resource from which the page was downloaded, right? It's just a very short description what this setting means. Disable cross-origin restrictions, right? In each browser, you could find a way how you can disable it, but it's absolutely required, right? So, and for our test, we will be performing a simple test. We will be saying, try it out. We will be taking one of the bigs, right? And if everything is okay, we should be receiving an answer, right? Which you see on the screen. The answer is okay, right? So, and that's the beginning of your journey with SwiftRef API. In the beginning, in front of you, I fixed a small glitch on the security model of SwiftRef API available over internet channel, right? That's number one. Secondly, I use my credentials as a Swift employee for demonstrating you how to call SwiftRef API, right? In your case, you need to use your own consumer key, consumer secret. You need to go license ID, license secret from your Swift administrator, right? So next point, which I would like to show, what about Swift Messaging API, which is for Alliance Cloud customers connected via enablement. So if I take Swift Messaging API, it's a different API construct, right? And at the level of this API construct, obviously, I don't have connectivity to enablement. I will be using Sandbox, right? And the first thing that I need to do, I need to establish a session. And what you see here, it is basically correct security model for Swift APIs protected on enablement. So I have no idea which value I need to use. Probably if I use test, let's see what would happen, right? And then let me try to submit a FIN message to Swift API Sandbox. So point of attention. Swift API Sandbox was designed to closely mimic security models of Swift APIs available over internet and in the enablement channel. So if everything is okay, I should be getting message cloud reference according to Open API specification of Swift Messaging API, right? But Swift API Sandbox is saying 401, sorry, I don't know you. I don't know who you are, right? And that's a fundamental limitation of Swagger Editor, which you will be facing if you try to learn enablement APIs, right? To understand what's happening, we need to open the slide deck, which is available already on Swift Developer Portal, explaining you the security model of enablement APIs, right? It's a composition of 4 pillars, right? Where the pillar number 1, it's a business application identification. So in reality, I need to enter consumer key, consumer secret somewhere. The second one is we basically authorizing financial institution, right? Authenticating, sorry, that's the second pillar. The third pillar, which is fundamentally important, we authorizing that financial institution has an access to a specific service. And the fourth, which is optional, but which is mandatory for majority of Swift Messaging API endpoints, we need to do an application level signing or what we call end-to-end non-repudiation. So by far, we were not even close to this model because with Swagger Editor, you cannot do that, right? So what is the solution? The solution is a Swift Swagger Editor, which you see here, right? If you look at the software, from Swift Developer Portal, you will be able to download the software. We're providing a source code. We're modifying service software, some of the source files according Apache license version 2.0. We provide all this modification statements, right, according the licensing model. So the software itself, we're providing as Docker images, right? So point of attention, you need to have, I'm not going to spend time on that, but you need to have your own Docker infrastructure available in the system. So I already installed Swift Swagger Editor. Well, I loaded images, right? And from images, I created basically container with the help of and container actually relying on a Docker Compose, right? Obviously, of course, I'm not going to go into details, but you need to be aware that your system should be provisioned for the Docker, right? So, and if I looked at all the components that were installed on this system, you could see that there is a Docker completion, Docker Compose, and on top of that, there is a Docker desktop, which you're seeing here, right? So with all being said, it allows me to run, well, if I open a new tab, I will be able to run a local version of Swift Swagger Editor because I'm using localhost, you see? And the response is immediate because the software is running on the same machine. So if I import messaging API, so I will see more or less the same picture. But if I select a sandbox and if I try to authorize, I will see exactly the same picture, right? So there is no difference. Now, point of attention. And that's something that you will see very soon published on Swift Developer Portal, right? Point of attention, meaning that in Swift Swagger Editor, we exploit what's so-called open API extensions, because each company can introduce its own open API extension addressing different attributes of open API specification. So we decided to come up with a number of open API extensions, effectively allowing unlock specific functionality in Swift Swagger Editor, which I'm going to demonstrate in the moment, right? In the moment. So if I go to Swift Swagger Editor, and if I locate security section, it's quite simple. It can be done to level of, and if I provide a value something like that, x Swift security equal true. Well, if you look at Open API specification, you will not find Swift security equal true tag, but it's Open API extension. So we have a right to introduce our own Open API extensions, right? And what is happening right now? Now, if I press Authorize button, then I will see additional fields available, right? And at the level of additional fields, I need to say basically what I would like to do. Remember, so the first one, let's start with the first one, which is business application identification. For sake of saving the time, I already have keys allocated, so I will be copying, pasting some keys, right? So we'll be taking this key. Then I will be taking consumer secret. So authorization URL, very important. Scope, what I'm trying to do. Scope, in our terminology, OS 2.0 scope is SwiftNet service with role-based access control. Swift Alliance Cloud API, very important. Authorization URL, very important. So my problem is that I don't remember authorization URL by heart. But if I go and install API session using basically Postman collection, which is part of Swift security SDK, right? Then I can actually do copy paste of authorization URL. That's very important. Now, alias. Alias is your identity. Well, we talk about channel certificate. So you need to get a channel certificate. How to get a channel certificate? Quickly, it's a standard OTM procedure. You go to your TM, you request, well, you're basically getting, you need to do provisioning of user DN, specific one. And then you need to provision user DN for specific SwiftNet service and role-based access control. Once you have a user DN, you can finalize CSR process, because before even going to user DN, you need to generate public-private key pair, and then with user DN, you will be effectively able to create CSR, and you will be able to submit CSR to WebToolkit and eventually receive a channel certificate from SwiftNet CA, right? That's a procedure. We're not going to go through this procedure simply because I don't have a connectivity to OTM on this machine. But what we're going to do, we are going to demonstrate. We are going to demonstrate. Well, we are going to demonstrate. I'm going to basically. I'm going to generate a cell sign certificate with a key tool. And what does it mean, cell sign certificate? You will see it in a moment. I'm saying who I am. That's a unit where I work, the name of organization. Okay, so I'm happy with everything. And at the end of this procedure, I have my identity GKS file containing effectively my identity, which is public-private key and self-signed certificate, right? So what I'm doing here, I'm choosing a file from a desktop, my identity GKS. Well, I protected it with a password, and self-signed is the alias, right? With no space, right? So if everything is okay, I should be able to get a session. Well, I got a session, right? Now, next, once I got a session, I will be trying to repeat this operation for trying it out, right? But then, important point of attention, important point that you need to take in account. When it comes about sending financial instructions using Swift messaging API, right? All these instructions, they need to be protected, right? So they need to be protected in a sense of providing an application level security by requesting an API client software to sign API request at application level. We're not talking about one-way, two-way TLS. We talk about an application level signing, which we call end-to-end non-repudiation. It's coming from a messaging, but the same terms persist in API world as well for us, right? So in this case, if I provide Swift security at the level of X Swift signature header equal true, then I should see something different. I will see an R button. So if I clean the value of this header, and if I press an R button, what is happening behind the scene? All the parameter of this API request, including obviously API body or post body, including all the headers, including query parameters, according specific algorithm, is basically we are creating a JOT signature, right? And then I should be able to execute this query against Swift's API sandbox, which closely mimics a security model for MVC and APIs, right? And I'm getting a message cloud reference. You may say, okay, we really would like to make sure what this type of signature is. We can see that. So if we go to such well-known tool as JOT debugger, we use self-signed cryptography. I'm just reminding you, right? So, and if we go to debugger, and if I provide this, you will see that it's a JOT signed by RSA. We're including a public key in this JOT, right? So that's basically the JOT structure which we're signing. And verify signature simply works because we're including public key, public certificate in X5C header. That is something which is required to be provided. And then obviously you could see my subject, right? Like CN, my name, where I am, location, and so on and so on, right? And that's a digest of the payload itself, right? And that's very important. So what you've seen right now is exactly something that you need to be doing in your application, right? So it's actually a very good explanation technique if you start using Swift Swagger Edge for you to understand what needs to be done. Okay. Thank you very much.